And then it'll be even longer before you can battle again. Do you want that?
So while I appreciate the points this doctor's making, because they do make quite a lot of sense, the fact that they do make this much sense does beg the question as to why Shu ends up going against him anyway, since he doesn't really have a valid reason to do so, which is kind of a shame. As well, this line is slightly different to how it was in the sub version, but I definitely like this one more, because the sub basically implies that there's a chance he won't be able to battle again, which makes the way he was injured seem so stupid, if that's what they were going for.
There will be other tournaments. Right now, you need to focus on your health.
Does this guy know how the Beyblade circuit works? Because according to what we're shown, you've got the district tournaments, the regional tournament, which is invite only, and the nationals, which you either have to have won a district for or won a block and a regional for. So obviously the line there will be other tournaments doesn't work too well, as she would have had to get invited to regionals and win something to be able to participate in something else. And if he means next year, that's a kind of bad way to convince someone to take some rest, if they're so invested. While I can deal with some contrivances in the show, this one's pretty bad, because this is exactly how they figure out Shu's injured, and it's just Nika happening to see Shu come out of the hospital, which is not very creative writing at all, which is a shame, because I generally expect better from this show.
Cold, maybe?
Wait, but Valt just said Shu doesn't get sick, and getting a cold is getting sick. What is Toko talking about here?
Seriously, do you think I broke him?
Although this moment from Nika is really good for showing the whole blame game thing that she sets up, which is good considering Shu goes against it in a later scene, and is also good for potentially showing her feelings for him, something that is explored quite substantially, but this is a more subtle way of doing it.
I'll go check!
Also, this is a great moment from Valt to build on his friendship with Shu. Really nice how he just goes out to look for him as soon as he thinks something's wrong.
Let it!
Pretty interesting to actually show Shu mislaunching, considering it's not something we'd ever expect considering his level of practice, but also it's good for setting up his struggle to launch in his battle with Orochi, which is something that causes him to struggle a bit more than he probably should, so it's good to set it up now.
Hey, what's up? You here to practice? I was just about to head out.
Also, it's really cool how the second Shu gets over the shock of Valt showing up, he immediately puts up this facade because he doesn't want Valt worrying about him, since he wants the two of them to actually face off in the final. So this is really good for showing all that, just with a change in how he talks.
Come on, I've got to go. Just tell me! Drop it, Valt.
Also, the start of this argument does set up a pretty good dynamic with Shu and Valt that's played off throughout this episode, where Shu's just trying to ignore the problem and Valt's refusing to give any credence to the idea that it might not be as big a deal as he thinks, which is a cool dynamic for these two to have around this injury.
Look, it's not Nika's fault. Let it go.
You're hurt! You think I'm just gonna drop this?
I also like how, firstly, Shu manages to get angry, which is something that hasn't happened so far, but it's something they have happened a couple times throughout this arc. But also it's cool how Shu doesn't actually blame Nika for what happened, since he doesn't think blaming people is particularly productive, which is a good character moment for him. And also, Valt's yelling here is pretty good for showing how invested he is in his friend's health.
It's no biggie, really. A little ice ought to make me right as rain.
I mean, while I like this line for showing how good Shu is at maintaining this facade, I still don't get why he would use something so obviously fake, if you know what I mean, because he just struggled launching before, and Valt probably saw that based on how close he was. So this line doesn't really make much sense to put Valt at ease, since it might do the opposite.
Somebody say they wanted ice? So, where do you want it?
So not only is this a good moment for showing Valt's friendship with Shu, and as well his kind of stupidity in the fact that he did carry this ice all this way, but also there's an interesting dub-sub change in the fact that when he sets this ice down in the dub, his pants are just normal color, but they're red in the sub, which I don't know which I prefer. That I guess I'd say the sub, though.
Dude, you should totally swing by my place sometime. You gotta eat some bread from my mom's bakery.
Wait, has he never done that before? They've been best friends for years, and yet, despite that fact, Valt's still saying this as if Shu's never done it before. And I know he means just, you should do it again, but the way this is phrased is implying that Shu's actually never been to his mum's bakery, which would be impressively wrong.
I prefer to practice by myself.
I do think it's cool how here he makes the reason he doesn't practice on his own more subjective, which is good for showing his development around whether or not group practice is good for training.
I think the Bay Club is working for you. You're getting so much better. It's incredible. Since you met Honcho and the others, your skills have improved so much.
Well, so this moment is good for showing the benefits of the club more explicitly, but also showing that Shu's warming up to the idea of group training, and the fact that he's observing Valt pretty closely, which is good for showing their relationship. It's just a good line overall.
Here's the thing. I really want to beat you. It's my goal, and I'm pretty sure I stand a good shot at making it happen. But you know, I want to make sure it's fair and square.
So there's a few things here. So one, he says, my goal is to beat you, which, I mean, I guess, but his goal's always just been to battle him. It was never really explicit whether he needed to win or lose for his goal to be achieved. But then also the end of that line could be seen as foreshadowing for the finale, which again is really good that they managed to do that, considering how bad that finale could have seemed without all the setup.
Yeah, you were saying?
Not funny.
Aw, come on. It's pretty funny from where I'm standing.
Don't make me regret letting you in.
Like that's even possible.
Also love this argument for further developing their friendship. It just really shows a lot of their character in this short time, as well as kind of building on the Shu temper problem he kind of has in this episode. This gag is really good for a number of reasons. Firstly, and most obviously, it develops Valt and Shu's relationship. It also helps show how over-the-top Valt can be, which was something that Rantaro and Shu brought up as one of his most prevalent traits last episode. But also, it's good for showing Shu's patience and the fact that he doesn't immediately yell at him for this.
I'm telling you to cut it out, Valt!
But then Shu losing his cool here is particularly good, because again, this episode is kind of about breaking him down, so it's good how he gets a lot more angry in this episode than he has throughout the show. That being said, this theme is way over the top for this scene. Like, I know it's mostly credited to Daigo, so I get what they're going for here, but like, listen to this! It's so ominous! And it's just for these two having a one-on-one, like, why?
Here's your chance then. See for yourself if I'm better.
I do like this as a motive for why Shu decides to challenge Daigo, and I also think it's cool how they let Shu square up against a lot of the members of the Bay Club to fully emphasize his strength.
The swelling's down, but it still hurts. Can't say I'm not a little worried, but as long as I use that stance.
So this is good for showing some of the truth to Shu's lie about ice making it better, in that it's obviously not going to completely heal it, but it is still going to give it a little to allow him to launch better.
Only trouble with that is, I want to battle right now.
This line is so cringe, because like, of course you want to battle right now. That's why he was making arguments for why you shouldn't. What do you mean? That's not a problem with his argument. He's a medical professional, Shu. Your personal desires don't trump that.
Go! Quake launch now!
There we go, the debut of Quake Launch, where the showrunners finally realized that Valt's friends could actually have moves. Although, my problem with Quake Launch is, obviously, since Daigo loses a lot, it ends up looking like a pretty weak move, but still, I'm glad that he actually gets to have one.
That was a great battle. You're really good. For real.
So while this is insanely clunky English, I still like Daigo showing humility since it shows his character arc. So while they could have phrased this better, this is still a fine moment.
Yeah, count on it!
So while I do like Valt showing a good relationship with his support group, my problem with this is they don't have him have any stage fright, and while that's fine, he doesn't need to, the problem is that that's generally a part of his character throughout the show, so it's weird that they have him just get over it for this moment, but then it comes back later.
Try not to mess up and lose to Orochi. Remember, you're my opponent in the final.
So this is a good moment for several reasons. Firstly, because it shows Wakia's cockiness. Secondly, the fact that he says mess up shows what he thinks of Orochi and the fact that he does actually think Shu's really good. And also, this is pretty cool for letting them have a interaction before Wakia goes out to fight Valt.
Valt can fight as much as he wants, but he won't win against my shield launch. I better finish this soon so I can focus on the finals.
Cool how after their match at his house, Wakia just completely does not see Valt as a threat, and so he's again back to thinking about Shu and not considering him, which is really good for setting up how angry he gets at Valt throughout their battle in this and the next episode.
We still haven't perfected our flash launch. If I mess this up, I'll basically be giving points to Wakia. I just can't risk it. But does my rush launch even stand a chance?
This is actually a legitimately good strategy moment for Valt, and I do think it's cool how both of the moves have flaws, so there's actually a legitimate consideration around them. Shame that won't vanish, right? All the moves are gonna have tangible flaws.
Climb out of your noggin, Valt! The clock's ticking! Self-reflection time is over! Get your head back in the game! Seriously!
Cool to have Rentaro snap him out of it here, considering that he has tried to do it in other battles, but it didn't quite work, so that's like a legitimate payoff off of all the times he's tried to snap Valt out of this. But also this delivery from Matt is insanely incredible, as always.
I've been training so hard, I'm not the same guy I was last time I faced Wakia!
So this choice of flashback is interesting, because all of these events took place in episode 8, and the two of them faced off in episode 9, so obviously these flashbacks don't indicate that Valt would have gotten any better since then, because this was prior to that battle, no? But to be fair to them for a second, there weren't too many training moments with the full Bay Club between their battle and now, so I get the problem, but still, this is not making much sense.
What do you think, Valtriek? Which one should I do?
Also, this is such a great payoff for what they did in episode 10, and the fact that he actually asked Valtriek for advice now instead of just doing what he thinks is the most logical play, which again makes that episode feel way more worthwhile.
He's smiling again. Come on now, people. Who ordered the clown?
This is a really funny joke to again set up Wakia's disdain for Valt that turns more into anger as the battle progresses, which I really do appreciate.
You shield launch right off the bat!
Of course he did. What do you mean, Hancho? What else was he gonna do? He used it right off the bat in the quarterfinals. Of course he'd use it right off the bat in this match. Was he expecting an angle launch? Like what? Again, this line is just trying to set up the intimidation factor of the shield launch, but it just fails miserably.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Is this rush launch or what?
Succeeding with the flash launch after failing it for so many episodes in a row is just so satisfying to watch. And the animation on it is also so cool with the trail of fire behind it as it moves Wyvron up the stadium. It's just such an incredible payoff.
It's all about the flash launch's speed. Valtriek's able to keep hitting Wyvron before it can properly get itself back into position.
I don't actually think this exposition is necessary since we've already had plenty of exposition around how the flash launch works. I still think it works fine for explaining why Wyvron's shield launch isn't deflecting him and why he can't use shield crash, so kind of unnecessary, but I get why they put it in.
Strong but weak. Weak but strong.
Again, like I said when he first set this up, this is such a clunky way to have Orochi kind of respect Valt, but also kind of not. Like, it's so blatant. And it kind of takes you out of the moment with how annoyingly in your face it is.
You've asked for it. Now I'm gonna show you how powerful I really am.
From the perspective of this line in the context of the dub, firstly, Cole Howard absolutely nailed this delivery. Secondly, the animation of Wakia here with his hair down really does show how angry he is and how into this he's getting. But I think everyone already knows that in the sub, they have a much better justification for this in the fact that Wakia has been blading with weights until then, and they have him take him off in the sub, whereas in the dub, they just have him say he's been holding back. So I definitely prefer the weights because they just make more sense. And I honestly don't get why the dub didn't go with those. Was it just because there's a joke where Nika covers her eyes when Wakia takes his shirt off? I don't get why that's a deal breaker. This episode's decent. The first half with Shu's a bit up and down, but the start of the battle between Wakia and Valt is really good, with an insanely good payoff with Flash Launch. So, overall, I like this episode, but I definitely don't think it's up there with 9, 10, 1, etc. Well, see you next week for probably my favorite episode of this arc.